Boo, and we are here. And for those of you who are watching online, I am so sorry. There are cords everywhere. We got chargers, we got connecting cords, we got headphones cords, and this is something that gives you you have some sort of phobia for it. I'm sorry, but if you're listening, just pretend I didn't say any of that stuff. Good to be here. It is Waitangi Day for those of you who are listening, or it's the observed Waitangi Day, so people are getting the Monday off. This is a long weekend for a lot of us. Now, my one request is that you do look it up and find out what it is that we are celebrating. I know it was something that was barely taught. It was taught at my school because I was part of a bilingual unit where we spoke Māori as well as English, and we learned a lot about this stuff, the history of it all. And for those of you who are celebrating this as a day off, I do believe it is something that can bring, I think we should be a bit more aware of what it is that we are celebrating, or what it is that actually gives us this day off, because that is huge in terms of being able to have a coexistence of Europeans or colonizers who come in and settle with the indigenous people of Aotearoa, which is Maori people. And it was this tool, was the treaty that was signed between us. It's some sort of tool of colonization, and actually stripped some of the privileges of Maori people. Maybe depends on how you go about it. And there are going to be a lot of people who hear that part and they're just going to say, "What the heck are you talking about? The treaty was blah 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 blah." But we have plenty of people who know this a little bit more than me. So definitely go check it out before you actually and try to see where you can apply the different principles or the different essence of the treaty into your everyday life, especially when it comes down to fighting, I guess, for rights for indigenous people here in their own country, on their own land. Came out firing from the beginning, and that is because this is the sort of work that I'm in every single day. But at the same time, I've been doing some amazing stuff for myself. I literally just had a meeting with someone who just told me that this is the best my energy has been in a long time. And that's interesting, considering, like, for me, I feel this is the worst I felt in a while in terms of just health wise. So I obviously got my booster shot, boost, and I got that, and I'm just feeling a little bit groggy from it. I guess I'm having some sort of immune response, which is what you want. But that's cool. It's a really cool thing to hear, and it's awesome, like the feedback that I've been getting from these emotional ones. People like me talking about emotions, and it's weird because this is probably the 18th episode I've ever said it, but I am Fields Armstrong, and I think if you listen to the podcast, over the years, it went from trying to identify what these emotions were to actually sitting with my emotions to just being emotional to now being on the other side, reflecting on all of those different emotions, and that's where we're at, and it's awesome to be here, and I'm so stoked to be able to get into whatever we're talking about today, because what are we talking about? I have no idea, but we are here. Thank you for joining me. So pretty much every single day since I've been back in Dunedin, I've been here for a week now. Every single day I've been doing some daily yoga practice. So I'm trying to do it every single day, and it's just a YouTube thing, so I can just do it in my room. So I do that. I wake up in the morning, I roll out of bed, and I get straight into it. I'd be down dogging with my eyes still closed. And sometimes, I have seen people light candles while they do it also. But I think sometimes you can, it could be seen as a seance. You could be doing a down dog and you like that, and then spirits crawling all up under you. But anyway, it's been a really nice practice. It actually makes me feel quite good in the morning, especially through my hips. And the person that I've been watching is Yoga TX. So if you want to go check them out, they're doing really well. I mean, there's quite a few on there. And something that I notice, I'm thinking about it right now because there's someone next door, and I know there's someone next door. But like, if they can hear me doing this podcast right now, they're probably just like, "Oh my gosh, that's so weird." Like, I'm embarrassed, and that's why I think I'm talking a little bit quiet. But it is so hard to be in front of a camera and do what they do. So these people who are putting out these YouTube things for yoga, and they're going through it and they're making commentary and all that sort of stuff, like, we have to remember that they're just doing it in front of a camera, and there's not people. So they are like, I understand how they must feel, but they say some of the funniest jokes as you're doing it, and like, I find myself chuckling even though I think they're really, really bad jokes. So anyway, I know what that feels like, but sorry, that's just taking me right off. But I've been doing a daily yoga practice, so I'm trying to do that a little bit more to start my day every day. Especially on the days where I don't train or where I have only rugby training. I like to do it in the morning just to kind of set myself for the day. So knowing that I've spent a little bit of time on myself, been able to connect with my body and been able to just move, because you're sleeping for about 8 hours, and you're lying down and you're pretty stationary, so that actually gets that movement flowing there. My last couple of days in Wellington were amazing. I had a really, really good time. So, I was running. I was getting up in the morning, getting up at 6, or getting up for a 6 a.m. run with my boys Tunga and Ari. So we'd take the dogs and we'd just go for a run, like a 5-6K. Then we'd do some weights as well. And that was really nice, because I always told myself, you're not a runner, you're too big. And I was getting big. Like, it's the first time that I've been over 100 kgs in a while. And I'm trying to stay here. So I thought that running was not really going to be the thing for me. It hurts, I look clumpy, and I'm not that fit. But persistently just kind of doing it over and over and over again. So maybe the first one was a little bit difficult and I just took my time. But then once I started getting into the groove of things, it's like anything, once you find that groove, it just comes a lot more natural. And also having that accountability to the boys as well. So knowing that we were going to be there to run and then to do these other things, I think definitely helped. I got to go out on a kayak as well. So there were a lot of things that I did for myself, and I've been doing more things for myself. And I think, that might be why my energy is in a better place than it has been for a very long time. And I've just had some really awesome feedback from a lot of you about the content that I'm putting out, because I feel like I've started to slack a little bit on it. But actually, I think what's happening is that I'm a bit more efficient in what I'm doing. So I'm actually writing down the things that I want to say, and I'm planning out different series and different episodes rather than just showing up and going for it. I'm actually putting a bit more work into it. I'm starting to read a few more books, and I'm starting to, really reconnect with my counselor and just talk about a few things. And I think I'm definitely in a good spot right now. And like I said in the last episode, I think a lot of it is to do with being in the sun and just being outside a little bit more. But at the same time, if that's going to help, as well as building up some other practices, then when we do lose the sun and I don't have those additional things, I will have mechanisms in place. So speaking about, just things kind of coming out of the blue and not knowing whether or not we're going to be okay. Literally the day that I came down, so in Wellington, we had the Wellington anniversary day. On the Saturday evening, I noticed that I had a puncture in my tire. And Sunday tire places were closed, and Monday tire places were closed. My ferry was for that Monday, so I had to move that out. And the old me, so it's so weird, because usually I'd be freaking out, but then I just realized I can't control the day, I can't control the times that these places are going to be open. All I can control is, just making sure I can get my car done, and then I can change the day that I need to go. These are things that are out of my control. What can I still do? I can still work from home. I can still do what I needed to do, but it gave me more time with my family. And just considering some of the health problems that we've had in our family, and just some of the people who, been in hospital and all that sort of stuff, the timing couldn't have been better. And I could have been shitting my pants, freaking out about all that sort of stuff that was going on. But what I did was I accepted what was my fate, what was inevitable in that moment, is that I could only get the earliest I can get a tire change is this day, and the earliest that I can get a ferry is this day. And they all just happened to work out for me, and I got to spend a bit more time with my family, and just be with my dad, and also just enjoy it. And it was weird, I didn't have any guilt about it. So usually I'd feel guilty and I'd feel like it was my fault, like I let the tire down or something like that. But this was really cool. And then once I got the tire done, I knew that I had ticked off what I needed to do to be able to go on with my journey elsewhere. So I missed one of my trainings for rugby, and usually I feel really, really guilty about that. But for me, I think where I was in my head and where I was in terms of getting those extra days was actually better off. So sometimes we're not going to see the benefit of anything straight away, but when you do have a look back and then you do see how things end up playing out, you feel a lot better for it. And some of those negative emotions, which I've talked about recently, they did start to come up. And I just feel like I'm really handling them a lot better. Like I could have just really felt guilty about not being able to make training and not being able to get into the office when I said I would. But I still got back into the office, and I still got the work that I needed to get done. So we're already in a better place. And that's something that I couldn't control, and that's something that I could definitely not change. So if we're talking about having excuses, I don't like to call it an excuse because it was actually a proper reason. But I couldn't change that. I really couldn't change that. Now, we're on this whole trying to figure out how we talk about these negative emotions. And this is what you all came here for. And this is what we're going to talk about for the next 15 or so minutes. Keep it nice and light and be able to take something away from it. So last week, I talked about how we probably haven't set up an area where people can talk about these emotions, because when you talk about it, people say you're weird, you're weak, you're all these different things. And it's just not normal for a lot of us to actually go in and talk about these emotions. Where I want to be able to get to eventually is to be able to highlight specific emotions and why it is that they make you feel this way, or what the types of things that make you feel that. But then I also kind of want to be able to create spaces for people to be able to come out and speak about these emotions. So we're still setting the foundation of knowing that it's okay to feel these feelings, and then kind of what happens if we don't deal with them properly, so that hopefully by the time we finish this, or by the time we actually get to a point where we're set to go, we're going to realize that having these bad emotions is not really an issue, but we still need to work towards actually getting us into a good spot for it. So remember, number one, negative feelings aren't bad things, but what I believe that they are, and this is something that took me a very long time, but after huge reflections and just chatting for a long time, I've realized that we have these yucky feelings because they are signals, or they're actually creating data for what it is that we like and what it is that we don't like. Weird, right? So you have all these negative emotions when it comes to nearly any event that you're going to go through, like different relationships that you're in, whether that be, intimate relationships or social relationships, your work, or different situations that you get into. The different negative feelings that you have in each of them kind of gives you a reflection of whether or not this thing is right for you. We need to start trusting our gut again. We need to start trusting our heart again and how we feel about different things. And if those feelings are negative, that's probably telling us something along the lines of our true values, or what is truly good for us, because we know what's good for us, right? So if something's giving you that feeling, then maybe we need to draw it back a little bit. And I think where we've kind of gone off the road, so I've brought up the classic sayings of it's okay to not be okay. The only problem is we continually perpetuate this for generations. We're always talking about you have to be okay, or like it's the types of things you get punished for not being okay. When you're crying, it's like, what are you crying for? Like, I'll give you something to cry about, and all those sorts of things. Or like there's this relentless positivity. So we're always trying to show strength. We're always trying to think, oh yeah, I need to be positive about this. But the more that we kind of put this, it's like when you put makeup. I'm not saying that putting makeup on is bad, but it's like, you're trying to mask and put on this brave face for everyone just to let everyone know you're okay, because by society standards, if you're not okay, you're kind of a bit of a problem. And then because we've always set up like, oh, you have to be okay, you have to be smiling, you have to be happy, like, I don't want to be around you if you're going to be like that. It's quite nasty what people are like, and we kind of showcased what is normal behavior. Normal behavior is to not be crying, is to not be upset about different things, and we just get over it as fast as possible. Now, what this does, and what it did to me especially, was make me feel like an idiot, make me feel like I was really broken, because I always felt like there was something wrong with different things. And there was stuff wrong with different things, because I was different, right? How I processed things didn't work with a lot of how other people would work. And I think instead of putting this face on for everyone because we didn't want to be perceived as fragile, by avoiding it and by avoiding how we actually felt, that's the stuff that actually made us feel fragile. It's so weird. So all of these, our mind plays so many tricks on us to make us feel like, okay, if we can do this, we can hide from different things, and then we'll just kind of deal with it. We'll just sweep it under the rug a little bit, and then it's just going to go away. The only thing is that we know with mess is that wherever you hide it, it's always going to be there unless you actually go in and properly deal with it. So this continuously, like I said, we don't have the power, or we don't have the ability to be able to articulate our feelings, because we were never allowed to have feelings, and we always had to be okay. And then what this kind of does for us is it leads us to two different ways, I think, of being able to deal with it. And the first one, and I've alluded to this multiple times, is just classic bottling. So actually bottling all of those different emotions and just taking it in and just pretending that nothing's wrong. So we just move forward without dealing with anything. And just like when you shake up a fizzy bottle, all of that stuff inside just starts to get more and more pressure. And then maybe something will happen and you just explode, and then it lets it out. And the worse it builds up, the worse the mess is going to be. And the bottling is also kind of what happens happens when you believe you can kind of hide from it for a little bit. And it's like when I was talking about last week, running into, or just kind of burying myself in work and kind of isolating myself from different things because I didn't want anything that could possibly bring up what it was that I was hiding from. And I was watching Money Heist, and I don't know if any of you watched Money Heist, and I watch it in Spanish as well because I'm super cultured. But on it, one of the ladies has this huge reflection, like they're just being hunted by the police and all that sort of stuff, and just out of nowhere she has this huge reflection of, she says it in Spanish, but obviously I was reading the subtitles, and it was like, if I ran fast enough, my sadness wouldn't catch up to me. So that was something where she was speaking about losing a loved one, and she just kind of buried herself into work and started getting like more and more into it so that she wouldn't have to feel those sad emotions. And then in this, like the heat of all of this sort of stuff, that's when she felt it, is because it kind of, she was hit at a very vulnerable spot. She hadn't eaten in a while, she hadn't slept in a while, and that's when it all hit her at that once, because she hadn't dealt with her feelings, right? So now we're even seeing it in popular pop culture right now, so it's kind of perpetuated everywhere, right? So if we're going to see it in that, then obviously you, my regular listener who's listening to me, E-list celebrity right here, must be feeling it as well. But that's the first one. So I think we either bottle it and we just move on as if nothing's happening, or, and this is something that I've seen more, and this is something that I definitely have done in the past, is we become the victims of our feelings. Right, let me just say that. We, instead of bottling our emotions and not addressing them at all, we become our emotions. We start to think, oh my gosh, life is happening to me. All of these different things. Like, that's what keeps us stuck in that emotion. So we actually never move past it. For the first one in bottling, we move past it, but we never deal with it. And in this one, we are never moving past it because that emotion now defines us. And because of that, we start to avoid anything that could help us. We start to avoid people who could help us, because that's part of our identity now, to be that person who was hurt, and anything that we could do. So like, I can't get that help because I am depressed, or I am depressed, me depressed. I don't want to get that help because that's how I am. And it undermines, I think all of this undermines our well-being overall, obviously, because you're not going to be okay because you're not dealing with it properly. But at the same time, it can kind of build up some sort of resentment towards different things when you see people in a better place, or are trying to help you but can't quite articulate the words properly because you need it to be a particular way because you're the victim. But at the same time, you can be quite a bitter person because you're hurt, you're upset, and you think that no one can understand you. Firstly, because you're not being able to articulate yourself, but at the same time, it's because you never want to bring up why it is that you are unhappy or uneasy. And all of these things stem from not being able to speak about what it is that we need to speak about. So what is the first thing? We need to know what the facts are. The facts are, we are going to have a bajillion thoughts every single day. Some good, some bad, some weird, some about cats, some about dogs, some about what you could be having for lunch. Some of these are going to be yucky thoughts, and that is just something that we cannot escape because these things come up. Now, what's the first thing we don't want to do? We don't want to pretend that we don't have those yucky thoughts, because I hope you're starting to understand what's going on here. We all go through some shit. We all go through a lot of shit. Now, we don't need to compare our shit to other people's shit, but we all do go through it. Okay, so what we need to do is, instead of pretending, or instead of thinking I'm just not going to have those feelings, we need to start thinking of things that we can do to make sure that we have a strategy in place. So, of course, we don't want to feel this way, but yet we do. So here we are, all right? So here we are. So our emotions are telling us things. They are telling us our needs in terms of emotional needs, but they're also telling us things about where we are and the actions that we are doing, and whether or not they actually match the values that we have or live our lives by. What I mean by values, and I think we talk about values. Values is one of those fucking, I don't know, it's just become one of those buzzwords now, like, oh, if your values. But I've talked about this before, but in terms of your well-being, or in terms of your whole order, if you say that you are a particular way, but your actions do not match what that is when we become sick. So I do find that when I'm not living up to my potential, or when I'm not living up to the person that I promised myself that I'll be, or that, is me as a person, so my core values, or the things that actually drive me to become better, and that I kind of base every action off, that's when I start to become a little bit sick for myself. So I feel like those yucky feelings that we do have is because either one, someone has transgressed and done something that goes against your values, or you are committing actions, or you are doing things, or in relationships, or doing actions, or putting yourselves in situations that don't morally align with who it is that you are. Now, you don't have to know your values off by heart, but if you can go by gut feeling about whether you think things are right for you in that moment. So they're telling us about our needs, and instead of pushing them away because we have to be positive, I think we should curiously examine them. So when we're starting to have these negative issues and negative feelings, we're like, okay, what is it that is actually making me feel this way? Is it when I do this action? Is it because of these different things? And we just can't have judgment about it. So if we start thinking, oh man, I've got this, I'm an idiot, stupid, why did I do that? We're never going to get to the bottom of it, and we're just going to keep pushing it aside. But I think we should curiously go in and look at them. I think something I see a lot of people doing recently, and I have seen this a lot, and I do want to say it's different people, but at the same time, I guess it's just the way that they are. But because of the generation that we're in, and always having to think positively, and always, the self-help movement is all about gratitude, which it definitely is, and like a lot of the practice is definitely good for you. I think we still need to be mindful and actually acknowledge when it is that we don't feel good. So yes, we can be grateful for all these different things, and it builds us happiness and all that sort of stuff, but you don't have to explain why it is that you feel bad about something. If you want to vent, and if something's really hurt you, and you start, because I see it a lot, when people are talking, they're like, don't get me wrong, I'm super grateful, and I know people have it worse than me. We totally just undermine everything that we had spoken about in terms of what is actually hurting us. So yes, we can be aware of all those different things, but I think at the same time, we need to properly feel out those different emotions and stop putting other things aside. So instead of like thinking my hurt isn't justified, or my hurt isn't enough to feel hurt about, just be hurt. Just be hurt, feel it, start to think about what it is that is actually hurting you. And now we need to learn from those emotions. So acknowledge it for sure, but then we need to start thinking, okay, why is it then making me feel that way? And I've said that a bajillion times, but basically, we can't manage what we don't measure. So with anything that you're going to be doing, you need to see what's the baseline, what happens, and then when that happens, what are the conditions that make something as the outcome? Because by then we can start to look at the different conditions. We can start to think about where we need to put you to be able to manage it best. Now, I think something that am I going to get in hot water for this saying this? I think saying I'm stressed, saying I'm overwhelmed, saying I'm anxious, all those different things, they're great to be, first just dissecting what it is that you're feeling. But what I think it does is that makes us feel like I'm an overwhelmed person, I'm a stressed person, I'm all those sorts of things. You are not your emotions, right? So that way you're not going to victimize yourself and be like, that's just the way that I am. But it gives us an out if we can say like, this situation makes me feel uneasy about different things. Instead of using blanket statements over different things, we can actually start to go a little bit more in depth. And then by that way, we're actually being able to practice that skill of identifying emotions a little bit faster, but also the situation that was involved. So that's just proper mindfulness. So like, this made me feel this, and then that made me do this. And then that's very, very simple, but take some time to actually look at what it is that you're feeling. And instead of saying I'm stressed, you can say this situation made me stressed. So when I had to confront this person, that made me feel stressed. I felt stressed. I am not stressed. Right? So it's really, really small little things with language, and I might have this totally wrong, but this is what I like to do now. And the reason why I like to do this is because I don't want to be caught up. So if I say I'm stressed, then it means that anything that could happen to me is like because of me being a stressed person. And then I start to feel like, well, that's just normal for me because I'm always stressed. And then I can never talk about it because, you're not meant to be talking about it. Stress or pissed off. I feel like no one's restricting your space. Yeah, so I think if you are feeling stressed or you're feeling pissed off about different things, start looking at the reasons. So you can either say like, maybe someone is not respecting your personal space. Instead of just being like, I'm mad at this person, like this person pissed me off. What is it about this person and what it is that they have actually done? And then you can look at the qualities of your actions. So think about your values, and are you taking the actions to be able to fulfill those values? And usually the further away you go from these different things, or further away that you go from these core values, that's the worse you start to feel. So some actions you do because others are, but it doesn't make you feel good. So starting to see, what it is that's going on with all of this. We are our best experiment. We are the best human experiment that we could possibly have, and we are the ones that are keeping data on everything that we do. And now this is a really, really good opportunity to say, we don't always have to be with the people that we thought would be our friends forever. We don't always have to make things work just so that other people can be happy. We need to start putting ourselves first a little bit about what we're feeling. And if this is what I've been starting to do with my work and my workloads and all these different things. And the reason why I'm saying this is because I am actually putting in the work. I moved out of a house that was making me feel miserable. I negotiated with my work that I can work some days from home, and I wanted to be at home a little bit more. So I'm slowly starting to see when I'm not enjoying something, that is my own life that I'm wasting. That is my own time. That is my own well-being that I'm putting under the pump just because I'm trying to live up to other people's expectations. So what I'm really, really, really doing, and what I'm really, really proud of, and it's probably why people are noticing my energy is so much better, is because I'm identifying the things that I can do for myself. Now, that's not to always think positive, but this is just to say, when you actually gather that data, when you start to see the different things that are making us unhealthy or making us stressed or making us overwhelmed, that's when we can start to change some things. And I know it's super privileged, and some people don't actually have this opportunity to be able to do that, but I also think being able to identify those emotions can help us, kind of step back from the different things that we're doing. But at the same time, if we can talk about it a little bit more, we can actually begin to dissect it for ourselves. So I think that we're still at that stage of everything. The more that I talk about this, the more I hope you're starting to realize that we can all kind of talk through it when we need to. And just remember that we need to start accepting these emotions, and whether or not you can change your physical space that you're in or change your mental capacity, we can, because I think that accepting these emotions and being aware of them a little bit more is definitely the cornerstone to resilience. It's just like anything. You need to get a little bit of it and sit in the nasty to be able to, make it less abrasive the next time that it comes up, because it actually gives us the skills for the world. Because in the world, we're going to be feeling these different things, and the more that we go through it, the more that we actually grow through these different things, the more we actually build up that resilience to it. So the next time that it comes up, it's barely touching our skin. Get that dirt off your shoulder, and we deal with the heartbreak and the yucky feelings when we are trying to work. So the effort that you put in, and the effort that you put into actually becoming a better person, and to not letting these emotions kind of take over the rest of your body, I think that's where we need to be. That is definitely where we need to be. So I've spoken about how to identify negative emotions, and I've also spoken about why we don't talk about our different emotions, and now I'm starting to get into what happens when we don't actually deal with it, but also that it's okay to feel these ways. And I kind of have spoken about it in the last 3 episodes in slightly different ways, but I hope from this you're able to take a little bit more. So hopefully next week the week after, we can talk a little bit more about trying to, kind of knuckle down on different emotions that we have. And then I think we'll be in a really good spot to start thinking about, creating a space to have these conversations with different people. And before I get into that, there are going to be people who you'll feel it. But I think there are going to be people who want to be those people that you talk to, and they'll be like, talk about mental health, blah, 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 blah. But they're doing it for themselves. Okay, so I genuinely just want to be better. I genuinely want to be better for myself. I'm not victimizing myself, and I'm actually so happy right now, and I'm doing really, really well. But I know that I can get low, and when I do get low, this is the type of thing that I'm going to be doing for myself, is just identifying it and being able to move forward without being overly positive about anything, but also without victimizing myself and becoming that person who's just dark, because that's how I want to be. So yeah, I hope you took a lot away from this. I barely know what I was talking about as I was going through it, but I think we stumbled our way through it a lot. But yeah, thank you so much for joining me for another episode of this sick-ass podcast. It is great to be here, and I'm looking forward to my episode with Ricky Persico next week. He is my coach, and we have a really, really huge chat about physical activity and strength and conditioning, as well as men's mental health through exercise, which is an awesome chat. So yeah, always good to be here. Take care. Love you all.